This week, I'd like to ask you a question. Do you know what your purpose is? Has it changed over time? Our purpose is less about what we do and more about who we are. When we're able to identify what it is that truly fulfills us and brings us joy, it can lead to applying that into our lives. Sounds good, doesn't it? This is our topic for today, finding your renewed purpose, your top 4 fulfillment needs. Stay tuned. This is Chronically Driven. All right, welcome back to Wellness Wednesday and the Chronically Driven radio show and podcast. Sandra Sova here, and I am really excited to bring today's program to you. Joining me are my guests, Barb Ashcroft and Permelia Parham, and we are going to have a conversation about what it feels like, what it looks like, and why you might want to reclaim your joy, your purpose, and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be a really good conversation. I'm so glad that you are all here to join us. Welcome, Barb. Welcome, Permelia. It is so great to have you here today.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Sandra.
So before we get into our topic, I thought we'd just take a little bit to get our listeners to know just a little bit about you.
Well, thank you, Sandra. Barb Ashcroft is my name, but what I am is I'm an author, mentor, encourager, and what floats my boat is being able to help individuals get to the other side, cross through their barriers, help them have some aha moment where they can have some undos and some do-overs and even some mulligans to their life, so that whatever they're in the midst of, that they can see the hope. So at one time I was called a hope evangelist. So I like that title.
I like that.
And I'm Pemelia Parham. My company is Vibrational Healing, and I am a certified body code and emotion code practitioner. As well, I do assist people in releasing any limiting beliefs that they might have, just so that they can be their best version of themselves. And this project that Barb and I are collaborating on really assists people in doing that and getting through those barriers.
Yeah, and that's why I was so interested to have both of you on to have this conversation, because it's something that really excites me. So that is finding a renewed purpose, gaining that back, that spark, that joy. And I think I'm running into so many people that have done that sort of pivot lately, and they're changing, they're doing things, reinventing their lives, doing stuff. And yet there's others that are sort of seeking that and wanting that, but they're not really sure where to go. They're sort of stuck. So what does it mean? What does it feel like when you are living in a space of joy and with purpose?
Well, for sure, it's like, being in the zone. It's just an amazing feeling when things are all percolating at the right pace, and such a contrast to being stuck and, confused, the quagmire. You feel like you're in quicksand, the unmotivated, so what? You get up in the morning, well, what am I going to do? Doesn't matter, uncertain, the lack of ambition. And that's, I think, when we had our first conversation, was we were seeing that people were more on the edge. They were just on the edge. And we thought, wow, we can help. We've got some tools. We've got, a little toolbox here that can help people with that.
I like the sound of that, as sort of having some tools and to help. What I was hearing from that is people kind of going through a transition, people wanting to, you know, if you've been in any sort of a malaise, any sort of a downtime, whether, and that can be, you know, that can be changes. Look at all the different changes and transitions that happen in our lives, in particular as women, whether we go through being parents, raising children, in and out of the workforce, empty nesters, you know, aging and going through. There's so many opportunities for change.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Sandra, because that is what finding your renewed purpose, that Barb and I have put together, the program that we put together, it can reach all of those people. So it's not just a career change or the fact that you have decided that you want something completely different in your life. It can be, as you say, anything that we are going through. And of course, in the last year, we've all gone through a lot, and we've all had to adjust in many ways. So, you know, to have the joy, to know what actually fulfills you, have that kind of that joy in your life, makes you want to hop out of bed in the morning. You don't want to just stay there. You want to be engaged with life.
It is so, so powerful to me, the difference that you actually feel like it's like you said, you want to get up and get going. You want to do things. It's like all the sort of circuits. It's like we always talk about on this program, mind, body, soul connection. And if you've got all those things firing at the same time, it feels so different energetically than when we're doing things that don't fit. And we're going to talk about this really interesting program that you ladies offer. But I think that the whole topic of why are we as a society so frequently putting ourselves into scenarios, situations, and things that do not bring us joy. And you know, that there's a lot of things that we do because we feel that we have to, or we should, or that's an expectation. But finding a way to say, well, what is it that I do like? What is it that I'm good at? Is that kind of like sort of fit in with this theme?
Totally, absolutely. And we have noticed over the few years that we've been presenting this program, a lot of people don't know what they want. They don't really know what fulfills them or what gives them joy. So once you know that, and the process that we take people through, they will find out the things that they need and want to have in their life to make them feel joyful. And then they can use that as a measuring tool against everything and all things in life. And oftentimes, as you said, and especially as women, we kind of put ourselves into boxes or scenarios as like, okay, I'm really happy in this part of my life or joyful, but this part of my life, you know, could be better. But our message is that you can find joy in every area of your life.
Yeah. And that's something that once you open your eyes to that and you understand it, that's one thing. But then where you come into play is, what are some of the things like that toolkit that we talked about? How do we actually get there? You know, I think over this past year, I think that there's been a real opportunity for people to try and think about different ways of doing things. And I think that for many, it's been an opportunity to add a little bit more joy for that. And just from that thing when we having to maybe look at doing things a little differently. This radio show is a good example. Previously, Permelia, you know, you were down, would come down to the station and we would record at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on the Wednesday of air date and have that confined time. And that was good. But for me, being able to do this from my home studio, recording it at a time that works for everyone, and being able to capture it that way, I'm doing the same thing, but I've changed it and I've reframed it to something where it's actually a lot more gratifying and it's more fun. So it can be as simple as that, right?
Yeah,
Not much changed, but I changed it up.
Yes, reframing is just so key. And you know, to your other question that you posed, what does this look like, or some of those challenges, there's a stumbling block that many have. And so we encourage people to embrace four assumptions. And it's a paradigm shift because for many people, they don't feel it's okay to feel fulfilled in every area of their life. They don't necessarily grab onto that the purpose of your life is to feel joy. And then for us, our objective is to create strategies to help people get their fulfillment needs met so they can feel joy in every area.
Well,
And
why would
so,
someone not want to have their needs met? What do you think our blockage is on with as humans on that one? Because I know I recognize that.
Well, oftentimes I think we don't know what our purpose is. And I certainly can relate to that, because the first time I ever encountered the idea that I had a purpose other than being, a sister, a daughter, a wife, a mother, those were the things that I was putting myself, the parameters I was putting around myself, thinking that was my purpose in life, and doing things, not just being. So when you look at, okay, who are you really as an individual, and what makes you joyful, and what do you want to have in your life that makes you joyful, then that takes you to a whole new dimension.
mm-hmm.
And giving ourselves not permission, because it should be, but the allowing that process to look and to examine and to recognize that
Perfect.
it's about so much of this. It's like self-worth and self-respect. And along, a lot of people I hear, they have a problem with self-care because they don't feel that
It's okay.
their priority list of things that they have to do, quite often, as you were mentioning, Permelia, to the different roles, whether you're an employee, a spouse, a mother, your roles and responsibilities quite often are filled up with taking care of needs for others, which is fine. There's place for that. But where is the taking care of you? Where do you get to that top? And I really believe that if we neglect these things over time, if we're living in a state where we don't have any joy or not enough and not enough fulfillment over time, not only does that erode at the quality of our life experience, but I think it has a physical toll on our wellness. And that's where dis-ease within the body, if it's not, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
If these things are unchecked, like, so we're talking about feelings and how, but it's bigger than that.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the paradigm shift that we love to take people through is, and especially women for the most part, because we haven't been taught by society or our families that it's okay to be looking after ourselves in self-care. I know I was always taught that if I was doing something for myself, it was being selfish. So that was a huge paradigm shift for me to realize that if I'm not being selfish to look after myself and do things for myself, because when I feel well and when I feel joyful, then I can do many more things for my family and for my community and for my clients. So yeah, it is a big paradigm shift, and we love taking our participants through that.
I'd also like to expand on, Sandra, what you said about purpose. A lot of people get confused with job title and purpose. So, for instance, what I love about this whole process is some people will say, well, I know my purpose. My purpose is to teach. So, well, really, is it to teach, or is it to find joy in making a difference? Is it, is it to find joy in creativity? Is it to find joy in really creating new possibilities for someone?
So taking that title, that job title, and breaking it down to the actual
So,
aspects of what you're doing to that, and figuring out where the fulfillment is in there. And that's part of
mhm.
what we're going to be walking people through. I think I think it's really important conversation for any time, but in particularly right now, I think that there's a real opportunity for people to recognize that things like finding our purpose and making ourselves a priority and in living in the moment, in moments that we enjoy, and treasuring our time is something that, guess what, it's we're able to create that. I'm excited for people to hear more about this process.
And it's also so interesting for me because um, I had the firsthand experience after discovering and excavating what my top four fulfillment needs were, was how to be able to use that for things that I really don't enjoy. So, for instance, here's an example because I'm one of probably the few that don't enjoy exercise. I'm not drawn to exercise. I do it, but it's not that it's something I know I need to do, but it's not necessarily a go to for me as it is for some people. So, but what's so exciting, Sandra, is to be able to maneuver your life around fulfillment needs. So, one of my fulfillment needs is community, another one is connection. So, what I ended up doing was joining a ladies' fitness group. So, I wasn't going there to exercise. Yes, I exercised. That was that was the PS. But I managed to get that in because I was going to have a connection. I was going to grow my community. I was going to be able to, have that met. And it felt so good. I felt like I was sort of, cheating that I was able to get it done. But there's so many things that we have to do, or I don't like the word should, but there's things that to be healthy we should be doing routinely, right? And
Mhm.
but we're not necessarily drawn to that. So being able to again have tools to be able to help maneuver the
And
path.
just to have, I think a lot of this is having the awareness if we are in a state where there are things that are making us uncomfortable, and also recognizing when we are doing those things that are really making us feel in the zone. I think it is something that we as individuals can benefit from, and the whole world as a whole. So we are going to take a break. I'm going to uh, send a bit of music your way. And when we come back, Barb and Permelia are going to talk about what is this process? Where did it come from? And what does it have to do with the game Survivor? You're listening to Chronically Driven here on Wellness Wednesdays, and we will be right back. Welcome back. Sandra here, having a delightful conversation with Permelia and Barb. We are talking today about finding your renewed purpose. And now we're going to talk about what the tools, what that actually looks like, and how you can start looking at finding your renewed purpose. Ladies, tell me about this program.
Well, let me jump in first. Um, Before Michael Loge even published his book, Your Life's Purpose, Permelia and I went and took in a workshop from him. And Permelia often smiles at this because I thought I knew 110% what my purpose was. I was just going down there to have some wonderful, road trip and to enjoy, Michael leading the workshop. So, anyways, lots of bells and whistles went off during that workshop. And I ended up phoning him the next day and saying, I have to teach this.
Wow.
If I think 110% I know what my purpose is, then, and I had revelations, then there's a lot of other people out there that definitely are in the same boat. And so that's how it took off for us. And I'll let Permelia share about the masterminds that we were doing at the time too.
Yeah, so Barb and I both had met Michael previously, and so we had a really good, he lives in Victoria, so we're all on the island. It was easy to pop down there for his workshop. And because Barb and I are part of networking groups, mostly women's networking groups, and all of the networking groups have guest speakers, they come with fabulous information, some of them have books. And what we were finding was that the other members were, they were taking in that information, but then it ended up being a binder on their shelf or a book that they purchased, but that didn't go any further. So we created a mastermind group, and I believe we had 4 of them altogether, 4 or 5. And this was to put the process together so that the women would actually know how to apply the information that they were getting. And it was amazing. People just loved what we were doing in the mastermind. And we had it over a number of 4 weeks or 6 weeks, I believe. And we took people through this process that we're going to talk about. And then we also gave them additional information as well as to how they could apply it. But they were amazed at, and all of the, certainly the testimonials that we'll talk about a little later were definitely supporting the fact that this process was very helpful for them.
And so currently now you're continuing to teach this process?
Yes. So what we've done is we've taken, because we can't meet in person. So last year, Barb and I started recording and doing with the idea of having a virtual online class. And it's taken us a few months, but we've got all the kinks out of it. Mm-hmm. And now we've got our online class. We did our very first introduction of the class. We do a complimentary introduction for 30 minutes just to let people know what it's all about. And then we did that last month, and we have had participants sign up to actually take the online class. It's also available for people to do if they wish to do it just by themselves. So there's, okay. So they can we can be there to hold their hand, or they can take themselves through it.
So finding the our renewed purpose, the process helps the individual identify to find those areas where they have the most fulfillment, and then can use that as a measuring stick. I think Barb, you'd mentioned that.
And not just finding what fulfills them, but what really is a big exclamation point is what doesn't fulfill them.
So how do you start identifying? I mean, like, that'd be just sitting and trying to think about that. So the tools that you provide help guide that person to help identify what resonates strongly, I guess, one way or the other.
Yeah, so there's a process we take people through. It's like a clarity through contrast. So once people know what they on the list, what things don't actually really resonate with them, then they can narrow the list down. And then we have steps that we take them through to narrow the list even further. That's why we call it Survivor. What survives?
Right. So a list of, and are these traits, behaviors, what sort of things on the list? What are we eliminating that doesn't resonate? What sort of things are we talking about?
We have a master list, first of all, of 30 of the most common fulfillment needs.
Fulfillment needs. Okay, so that's the phrase I was. Okay, so these are Right. These are the things that fulfill us, that make us feel that joy we've been talking about. So from the I'm just from the master list of 30, you first I go through, and this is, I understand this sort of stuff. It should, you don't, it's not a lot of thought process. It's supposed to be that quick instinct response.
Yes, exactly. That's the first process we take people through is we give them the list and we
Okay.
tell them just to cross off in pencil because they might re-examine it later after they've gone through the other exercises, but just what off the top of their head. So for example, importance on the list. For me, important wasn't that important, but appreciation was, although I consciously didn't realize how important appreciation was for me, how much I loved to have, the thought that I was being appreciated until I went through the process and then realized, oh, it wasn't one of the ones that I initially thought I really resonated with until after I went through the process and it kept coming to the surface.
And Barb, you'd mentioned that too after you went to hear that you had thought you'd known your purpose,
Mhm.
and then you just discovered, and that's what I that at the gist of it is what I find so fascinating about this, because I don't think we allow ourselves the time. We get into that, I'm not going to say rut, I'll say that track. We get into
Mhm.
that track
Yeah.
of doing the things that we do because we've always done them, or we're expected of that, or that's what everyone's doing, and we do this. But wait, so this process allows you to take that introspective look and ask yourselves those questions and allow yourselves to hear those answers.
Well, for me, it was so insightful because you know we're I don't think we're just trained, but we're led to believe not to focus at all on anything negative. So many times we just push that, to the side
Mhm.
and don't focus on it. But just one of the questions that we go through in process 2, 3, and 4 is asking what one of them is in your, what was it that you didn't like in your worst job? What was it that you didn't like?
Mm.
And it's funny because, we can often think of what we don't like, but that's what clarity through contrast is. Then you can quickly do the leap over to, well, then what's the opposite of that, to what you do like.
What did you really like? Yeah.
So in my case, and I'm happy to share with this, is that what a really icky experience I had with one of my jobs was that I had an alcoholic supervisor who, if you weren't covering up for her, you weren't getting a good job review. And I did not realize how much that, really got to me until this process. And what kept on coming up was fairness, 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 because I knew I was doing an exemplary job, but it would never show, right? But the positive on that was that's what catapulted me to become an entrepreneur, was because I wanted to be paid what I was worth, not how someone else thought of me. And so it propelled me that way, and it was powerful, and it's been a real catalyst. And Permelia smiles because there's so many times that this fairness will come out, even in a dinner meeting. You'll have
Yeah.
people around the table, and I'll be saying, well, gee, like we're all supposed to have 2 minutes. Can you hold that till the end and let's have everybody have a turn? I mean, it just really shows up all over the
That's
place.
That's why this stuff is so powerful, because what you described there, so we're identifying, thinking of a workplace, thinking of a job. What was the thing we disliked most? What was the thing we liked best? And we're not talking about tasks. We're talking about core values. We're
Mhm.
talking about how we're wired. And Barb, how you say that comes up in other scenarios. That's why it's an important one for you. And so going through that process, I like the idea of first saying, okay, this one doesn't hit, this one doesn't. And I really like the idea of doing it in pencil because we can change and
Yeah.
evolve. Um, so that's sort of step one for the process is you go through that identifying process through the process of elimination, seeing what's left. So you're playing survivor. The tribe has spoken. These are the ones. These are the members. These are what make up who we are. And then you're going through and you're doing that exercise like you described, looking, having people reflect what was their favorite and least, and you from a job, but that could be from a volunteer experience, that could be in our past relationships, that could be, whatever. So anything that how are we spending our time, wherever we're spending our time, what identifying the best and the worst to help know what fulfills us, what
Or what
brings
was
us joy,
missing.
or
Yeah.
what
So
was
if,
missing.
yeah, so
Yeah.
we get part of the process is to get people to look back at those 30 fulfillment needs when they're identifying what they loved about their best job or what they didn't. What they loved about their best job, okay, well, what fulfillment need was being met? What they didn't love about their best job, what fulfillment need wasn't being met? So it's very powerful to be looking at both sides of the coin, sort of.
I think so. Yeah.
Well, what happens is we have a master sheet that you're going through, uh, and it's a fulfillment needs list where once we go through the 4 processes, we go through and we list them all on the sheet. And of course, there's little X's that go beside them. Let's say fairness for me. Fairness was one I penciled off in the first one. I didn't think fairness.
Interesting.
Well, that wasn't a biggie for me at all. But then it kept coming up. Fairness, 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 fairness. And by the time we got to the end of the sheet, it had the biggest count, right? So,
Okay, so I might have more work to do because I went through the list of 30 and I've identified these things, but that was maybe I need to, there's more layers to this thing we're building on. I
Yeah.
like
So
it.
you might discover the ones that you picked out. Now, a couple of them could end up being your top 4 fulfillment needs, but that's the whole process. Why we take people through the second and third and fourth process, because we want the top 4 fulfillment needs to rise to the top. Because you could look at that chart of 30 and go, well, if I had all of these in my life, I'd be very joyful. But that's not the point. The point is to figure out what the top 4 fulfillment needs are.
Yeah,
That's
and you get that clarity through contrast, as you mentioned, and then so having when you get that, now you're armed with, you have that toolkit, now have the knowledge to be able to make choices that are more in alignment. Choices, maybe it's like having a cheat sheet, to something sounds interesting, but I guess if you do that testing against it, you can know, am I being dazzled by something, or is that a really good fit?
Exactly. And what you said, Sandra, is that's why we call it a discovery process. Because what we're doing is we're prospecting, we're excavating, we're trying to get down to the bottom and find, okay, who survived? Who had the highest numbers of repetition on this sheet by the time you're done? And then those top 4, we put them on different colored Post-it. And what's cool about that is now you get to test them. So you have them in their pecking order, whatever their numbers were. And I know Permelia and many of the other gals, they have them they stick them right on their tray for their keyboard. So then your homework from then on is, okay, you come home and you had an amazing experience. And you come home and you pull out your computer tray and say, oh, which one of my fulfillment needs was met there? And so you move them around and you find out, oh, okay, let's see. Okay, or you have a sucky experience and you come home and you think, what was missing? What was missing? And so then you have a chance to be using this for ongoing.
Okay, so I just had an aha moment with that because when we had our previous chat, that process didn't click. So I'm going to, in case there's others that are slow learners, such as myself, I'm going to repeat that process because I think that's really powerful for ongoing. So you identify your traits of what's important to you and what's not, and you go out and you just have an amazing experience. You have an amazing day. Something great happens. You feel in the zone. You're in flow. You do a stop and you check in and go, which one? Oh, it's because I felt appreciated. There was so much appreciation there. Or one of mine was creativity. I was able to really tap into my, so that's why I'm feeling so good. Or I come away from a place and I feel really drained, or an invitation has come up and I've said yes, but I don't want to. I can check and see. And is it that something's usually missing? Is that kind of what how it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You're feeling unfulfilled because something is missing.
And then it's up to us to make the decisions to navigate and zig and zag and bring and attract more of those good experiences and maybe steer ourselves around and clearer for those other ones. It's reminding me a little bit of love languages, right? Knowing what works and what doesn't. And this is amazing information to know about ourselves. But what if we actually knew the fulfillment needs of our partner, our spouse, our children, our coworkers?
Well, Barb's got a very exciting story to tell you how that works.
Yes, just, oh my goodness, it still gives me, bumps. And I was hired, one of our mastermind gals hired me for her school for professional development day for her teachers. So we did from kindergarten up to grade 8 teachers. And we went through the process of playing Survivor, doing the whole process. And oh my goodness, it was so amazing because they then found out the fulfillment needs of the other staff. And this just is such a warm, fuzzy story. One of many were mature teachers, but one was her first gig, her first teaching position. And I remember her saying, it was so heartfelt. She said, one of my fulfillment needs is, it's recognition, but I don't know, again, you see, about the paradigm shift. Am I really allowed? Is that okay for me to be recognized? That to have that as a fulfillment need. And she ended up going out of the room for a while, and the other teachers got together and said, "Okay, guys, whenever you see her do something that's worthy, make sure you go and recognize." And just say, "Good job! Look, I love how you did that. I love how you did that." And oh my goodness, I mean, just the synchronicity of that team, how much stronger it was, because if there was something, a job description that one just really didn't enjoy, they could go and ask help from the one that it was their fulfillment need to do that, creativity or whatever it was, right? And so I was actually hired back because they had new staff, and it was so neat just to see how teamwork, any team, could be able to flourish under that whole thing.
I wish that training would have been one of the ones that was offered when I was in the corporate world, because they do that. They get managers get together and we do some sort of personal development, or not called bonding, but
team building.
Team building. Thank you.
Right.
And this one is this that what I this is one where I could see having longer lasting benefits than just while we were in the room. Because once you learn those things, it's like that story, Barb. You can make the small little change of how you interact with others. And if that fulfills them, if that starts filling their cup, and everyone's interacting and making each other, supporting and lifting up and cheering each other on, everyone is going to respond better to that. I mean, even just like energetically, I love this. You need to we need to get this word out there. This needs to be curriculum in the yeah.
Well, I just have to share this other part of the story because I got a testimonial back from admin of the school. I'm just going to read it to you. She said,
Please.
it was all about communication. She said, all of us have benefited both personally and professionally with this lifelong understanding of ourselves and each other. But also, I've noticed that our students are totally picking up on this culture of communication, giving compliments, encouragement, fairness, and integrity in their communication because it's modeled. Oh, isn't that a feel-good story?
It is, and I got what I call them truth bumps.
Yeah,
When
truth
you
bumps,
get with
okay.
those, it's just like it resonates. That's yeah. I mean, and that's what we that's amazing. And so what does it look like? Is it is an online a series of workshops? How what is the sort of the time commitment that it takes to go through this process?
Well, what we did is we took our basically our taped or record, I guess they don't use taped words anymore, recorded sessions that we did online, and we created from those actual instruction videos. We have videos and text and content on the website. And so individuals can start right there, and we have the downloads for the different worksheets are going to go through. And if they were in person and you were going from start to finish, it would probably be maybe, what do you think, Permelia, 3.5, 4 hours grand total of going through.
4 hours total. Mm-hmm.
But they can go through at their own pace. We do encourage them to, we want them to be able to go through it so that we can have a live Zoom meetup with them at the end so that we can help coach and steer, because we're really big on, okay, what do you do with this now? And that's the strategies that we focus in on.
Yeah, so we do that follow-up with our participants, because we know it's great to know what your top 4 fulfillment needs are, but then what do you do with them?
Exactly.
So the strategies and the mentoring that Barb and I do is then, okay, how do you now use these in real life? Yeah, so we can support the people that sign up for the course.
This is all sounding so fantastic. Do you have anything coming up?
Yes, so our next complimentary information session is going to be June the 15th.
Okay.
At 7 p.m.
June 15th at 7 p.m. And this is going to be, is it online, like via Zoom,
it's a Zoom
platform?
Yes.
Okay, so if people were interested in learning more about this, it's complimentary, free, 30-minute so a private Zoom link where people will come in and get to learn a little bit more about this process, because it is a process that when people have a better understanding of it, they can sort of see whether or not that's something that they would want to explore further.
Yes, absolutely. And then we offer at the end of that 30 minutes, we have 2 offerings. We have the self-directed offering, and then we also have the offering that Barb and I can meet with them.
I think that's really nice to have that option, because some people are really into self-guided stuff. They're really savvy with online, and then there's others that maybe they're, really have going through some transitions, or they're feeling that sort of sense of being stuck that we mentioned, and could use some of the guidance and mentoring. And that's where you ladies can come in and, like you say, help support and guide them to get the most out of the process.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. And we're just thrilled when people have their 4 top fulfillment needs, because then we can really get down into meat and potatoes from a prairie girl. Okay.
I love it.
That as far as, okay, how are you going to access these on a regular basis? What's the strategies for that? And, one of our other gals, a professional gal that had her VIP customers, and she just she was like Permelia. One of her top ones was appreciation. And as you probably know, when you have your let's say appreciation as an example, you're going to appreciate all the people around you. It's just something that you do. But I shared with this gal at the end of our course, and I said, well, so how are you going to be appreciated? How are you going to be able to find this? Because she was doing these awesome VIP events for her best customers. And she said, well, gee, I don't know. I mean, I appreciate the heck out of them. And I said, well, how about at the end of your event, here's a strategy. Ask them to take out their phone, and if they would get onto Facebook, get onto Instagram, and just share what they liked best about tonight. And so they're running around and taking pictures. Of course, no problem, no problem. So she got appreciated, and she also got social proof for her business. Mm-hmm. So that's some of the strategies that can be so simple, but sometimes it takes someone from the outside in to be able to think in those terms. So that's the other thing we provide. And Permelia is awesome with her, limiting beliefs sessions, as well as her emotion code, because we are an onion. There's lots of layers.
Lots of layers.
And lots of people don't know, they know what they want, but they don't know how to get past it.
Yes.
So that's when I can offer them a limiting belief session or a body code, emotion code session to release those trapped emotions or what's getting in the way of them being their best self.
Because sometimes we do need to have a little extra support and to help us navigate through change and all as we're doing these discoveries.
There was one of our participants in our mastermind who is a very successful professional woman, and she didn't realize fun was so important to her. She, she's very professional. She's very put together. She's very organized. She's been in business a long time. She knows what she wants and where she wants to go. And so that was one of her aha surprise moments, was when she was putting all the X's and the ticks together and adding up. Fun was one of her top 4 fulfillment needs. So it's just a surprise. It's just another example of how consciously we don't always know first look at the list exactly what's going to rise to the surface after we've done the process.
Be on the survivor list at the end.
That's right. What survived? Yes.
That's right. Well, I think, identifying this sort of stuff is really one of the building blocks to, like I always say, being in the driver's seat of this beautiful, incredible life that we are given, and to be able to being more joyful and finding our renewed purpose is something that when we do that for ourselves, I guarantee you we show up better for those around us. So it is the absolute opposite of anything selfish. It's a gift to yourselves and others, and you're improving our well-being. It's just that's the recipe for good health.
That is definitely, yes.
Where can people find out more about this complimentary session that is taking place?
They can find out more on Permelia's website or mine, barbashcroft.ca/workshops is where they can actually see the description.
Register.
Mm-hmm.
They register in Barb's website.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a link that we can then send them so that they'll get the Zoom link. So.
Okay, I will put that link into the show notes for the podcast and for YouTube. If you would like to listen to this show again or any of the previous chronically driven episodes, just head over to YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts and music and search for Chronically Driven, and that's where you will find me. I would like to thank Barb and Permelia so much for sharing this time with us today and for giving us this sneak peek, this introduction for finding your renewed purpose. Thank you so much. You have been listening to Wellness Wednesdays here on CHLY 1017. Well, that wraps up another show. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed today's program and found it beneficial in some way. Reminder to check the show notes on the podcast or YouTube channel for contact information and to register for the free information session that Permelia and Barb are presenting on June the 15th. Again, I'll see you in 2 weeks. And until then, I am wishing you wellness.